everybody. I'm Jay Privman, the national correspondent with Daily Racing Form. Mike Watchmaker, the national handicapper for Daily Racing Form, joins me. And Mike, we have a lot to recap from last week. Lots of races impacted our Derby Watch Top 20, but let's with the race that was the most anticipated one of the weekend. And it certainly lived up to its billing in terms of the stretch drive, that being the San Felipe between Bolt d'Oro and McKenzie. Your thoughts on how these two performed and what it means going forward?
Well, Jay, you know, on paper, like the San Felipe might be the best prep we've had so far, and it was by far the best prep we've had so far. I mean, these two colts, Bolt d'Oro and McKenzie, are obviously top-class horses, and they are main threats to win the Kentucky Derby. Putting the bad disqualification aside, only concern I have is that maybe this race was too good. You know, it was they really both laid it all out in that race, and it was their first starts fresh. It was the first race for Bolt d'Oro since the Breeders' Cup. It was the first since very early this year for McKenzie. It's always been my belief that the quintessential description for a horse who's a candidate to regress form-wise is one who delivers a gut-wrenching performance off a layoff, and that's what these horses did. Now, you know, maybe they're young 3-year-olds, maybe they can absorb something like that, but that's my only fear. But there's no question that these two are amongst the very best of their crop.
Well, they will have 4 weeks until their next scheduled start, that being the Santa Anita Derby at this point in time. Now, for me, Mike, I thought Bolt d'Oro ran much better than I would have expected coming off that long layoff. McKenzie at least had a start earlier this year and had trained along, whereas Bolt d'Oro had an interrupted training schedule. And I thought for him to just, irrespective of disqualification, I thought for him to be lapped right on McKenzie at the end of that race really was testament to what kind of quality Bolt d'Oro has. And we already know what kind of quality McKenzie has. Both these horses have run a series of very good races, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they do in their next starts. And I think your point about how much this race takes out of them is something that everybody rightly is going to need to be monitoring as we get closer to the next start and see if it impacts them when they run in what will be their final prep for the Kentucky Derby. Let's move on now to New York and the Gotham Stakes, which was won Enticed. And this is a horse, Mike, who I thought had the dream trip of life on Saturday. An outside post, nothing in his way. He's a big horse who I don't think you want to get stopped at any point. And in his last start, they said that he didn't like being inside. He was nowhere near the inside here. So that's great. To me, he ran well. But I don't know what that's going to mean when he runs against potentially 20 horses in the Kentucky Derby. What do you think?
Well, you know, the good thing for Enticed is that he put the very bad taste of his Holy Bull to rest. I mean, you know, he was dismal in the Holy Bull in his first start this year, and he bounced back from that, and he earned a pretty decent 95 buyer figure in the Gotham. But I thought he was beating a pretty empty field, and he's going to have to do better than that against better horses. But he's a horse that has some quality. He won the Kentucky Jockey Club late last November at Churchill Downs, and that race has proven over the past several weeks to be a very productive race because we've seen just a handful of horses come, you know, who ran in that race win a lot of our recent preps.
That's for sure. Horses like Promises Fulfilled, Bravazo, the horse we're going to talk about next being Quip, who won the Tampa Bay Derby over. Those two horses are on our Derby Watch Top 20, but Quip is new to our list. He's coming off of a layoff. This was his first race since that Kentucky Jockey Club Mike spoke about. Mike, what were your thoughts on this race, most notably the top horses who are in our Watch Top 20?
Well, the news is that Quip in his first 3-year-old improved his best buyer by 17 points. So that indicates that he has taken a significant step forward from 2 to 3, and that's what you want to see from these horses. The bad news is that you just watching the Tampa Bay Derby, I just couldn't escape the feeling that it was decidedly a cut below the best 3-year-olds that we have out there. I mean, we had the luxury of having the Tampa Bay Derby and the Gotham and the San Felipe all run within a very short window on Saturday afternoon. and you could just make your personal assessments just off of that. And I thought it was the weak sister of the three preps that we saw that Saturday.
I also thought, Mike, that the first two finishers in that race benefited from a pretty soft pace, and it impacted, not that the late runners would have had a chance because they really didn't make any late run at all, but certainly I thought the pace of the race benefited the top two finishers in this race. Flame Away keeps plugging away. He's certainly not the best, I don't think, of this crop, but I admire just the way he fires every time, and it doesn't matter what surface he's on, whether it's grass or synthetic. And Quip, we'll see how he progresses. As you mentioned, a career best Beyer speed figure, had some trouble in his lone loss. He's now 3 for 4 lifetime, but he'll get a much stronger test in his next and final prep for the Kentucky Derby. Let's now turn our attention to Europe and a couple newcomers who we've put on the list this week, beginning with one horse you are all familiar with, and that's Mendelssohn, winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. He won a stake last week, Mike, at Dundalk. What did you think of his performance and his inclusion on the list this week?
Well, it looked like a song called Prep Mendelssohn, and it looked like a race meant to for start in the UAE Derby, and I think in that regard it served its purpose. I know the big question for Mendelssohn is, will he be able, and this race, by the way, took place on a synthetic surface. The big question with Mendelssohn is obviously, will he be able to run as well as he did winning the same Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf last summer on dirt surface? And my opinion is, I don't see any reason in the world why he won't be able to as well if not on dirt. I mean, he is a half-brother of a 4-time champion beholder, and he's by Scat, who's the sire of Flame Away, you just mentioned, runs well on every surface that they run on. Of course, much of it has the fact that they've been careful in picking his spots. Also the sire of a horse we're going to in a moment or two, Justify, who might be the most exciting 3 out there. So Mendelssohn's pedigree says dirt all over it. I don't see any reason in the world why he won't run well on it.
Now, the other European runner that we've added to the list this week is Gronkowski. And, Mike, I'm a lot more skeptical about this horse. I thought he had extremely weak competition over there. He certainly tested when he comes over to run in the U.S. in his next start. But to me, of the two, he's the weak sister of these drivers from Europe, Gronkowski.
Well, you're right, Jay. I don't think he's as accomplished as Wilson, and he probably isn't as good as him right now. But I think what's really intriguing about this horse is that he's a European horse that's going to come over here and have a final prep on one of our final preps. And I think that's a very smart thing to do. I've always said that if I had a European-based horse that I wanted to win the Kentucky with, he's final prep here in the States in one of our last races on dirt against quality horses, I would stand. So I think we're going to find out where Gronkowski stands very quickly when he runs our final prep.
All right. Well, I'm taking the negative approach towards him as opposed to Mendelssohn. But one horse that we're both extremely excited on, you alluded to him just a moment ago, and that's Justify. He's yet to run in a stake race, but he's certainly ready for one now. After another terrific victory, this one last Sunday at Santa Anita, this one in Allowance Company. Mike, what did you think of the way Justify performed in his 2-turn debut?
It was just an awesome performance. And I mean, let's get it out of the way. He didn't beat anything, but it was all about the way he did it. I mean, he won under a pole, and he got another triple-digit Beyer speed figure. So he's had 2 starts now. He got a 104 in his debut and a 101 for that second start, where he was really barely being asked to run. He's very, very exciting. I'm just dying to find out what race they run him in. I'd be very curious.
Well, he'll be running in a major prep race either on April 7th or April 14th. It'll be his lone chance to earn enough points to get to the Kentucky Derby. But to me, Mike, it's going to take care of itself, because if he doesn't run 1-2, he doesn't belong in the race anyway.
Right.
I'm certainly looking forward to seeing how the chess pieces get moved around with he and McKenzie for Bob Baffert as we get closer to races like the Santa Anita Derby, the Wood, and the Arkansas Derby. Well, that is our extensive look at all the races from last week that impacted our Derby Watch Top 20. Stay tuned here at DRF.com for a preview of this week's Rebel Stakes. For Mike Watchmaker